Let's take a few minutes to talk about the questions from Module 4 when we were talking about reading out loud to students and reading extensions. One question asked about concept of print and made the point that we know that children learn through repetition, and that is very true. Children totally learn through repetition. However, there is no absolute when it comes to learning behaviors. And that's really important for us to understand, is there are no absolutes, no end all be all. This is the trump of all trumps. Instead, we have to remember that yes, children learn through repetition, but children also learn through modeling. If you are an English speaking person and you grow up speaking English or French or German or any other romantic language, you will observe people reading from left to right. You don't really have to talk about it. Arguably, if you are around in a literature rich environment, meaning you watch people physically write letters, write cards, write notes, if you have that experience, if you watch adults doing it as a toddler, you will naturally learn and understand that we read and write from left to right. You will understand how to hold a book because it's a natural occurrence. I know that children need to understand concept of print and they need to understand the front cover, back cover, and spine. But we don't have to skill and drill. So that's the difference. Yes, children need repetition, but they don't need skill and drill. Everything up here about concept of print, there are situations and times where you do need to explicitly teach it once or twice. But if you're reading books and if kids are around people reading books and they have access to books and you are reading with them, they'll understand front and back, left to right. They'll understand that pictures give us information because of the rich conversations we have. And we don't have to always explicitly talk about it. Frankly, singing songs about the front cover, back cover, and spine, every single time you sit down to read, it becomes white noise. It doesn't engage the student. It's just memorizing. It's not meaningful. And at that point, it becomes skill and drill. So you are right. Children learn through repetition, but it's not meaningless repetition. And that's what we have to remember. It's quality too. To show or not to show pictures. In general, I see in these last two modules, and I totally get it. I feel everybody's almost agony in this. You guys are really good, and your desire to do it right, and you are digesting all of this information fully, and I love that. I appreciate that. And because of that, I think you're struggling sometimes when the book makes a suggestion, because several times today I'm going to say, well, yes, that's true, but let's remember the larger context. So to show or not to show, sure, you should show pictures a lot when you read picture books to toddlers especially and preschoolers, but I say often to children in childcare who we know should be having access to books and being read to multiple times a day at the program, that by 4 years old, they're ready for some simple chapter books. And that's what that's getting at, is when we read a lot to children, we want them to begin to make their own visualizations in their head. Because that's what you and I do when we read. When we pick up the latest Kristen Hanna, love her historical fiction. When we read her books, we want to see those images in our head, the relationships, the fights, the arguments, the makeups. We want to feel that. That's what makes the reading amazing and meaningful to us. That's comprehension. So when we look at this idea of to show or not to show the illustrations, this is an example of doing it once or a couple times. Maybe once a week you pick up a book and you're like, this is our special no-show book. I am not going to show you the illustrations because I want you to use your imagination. And you could then have, if the kids want to afterwards, they could draw pictures of what they saw. They could do that while you're reading to them. They could draw a picture of what they're seeing in their head. And so it's a different teaching opportunity when you don't show those pictures. So as you read some of these ideas, remember they are not absolutes. They are not all the times. They're a twist of, well, what if you do it a little differently sometimes? There was a question regarding reading to infants and toddlers. Toddlers are a hard age to read to. It is okay to switch books. It is okay to engage in that active person. But this saying is rather famous. There's been campaigns, public literacy campaigns about how children learn to read using the idea here. Children are made readers on the laps of their parents. I'm going to read that again. Children are made readers on the laps of their parents. I want to substitute a word here. Children are made readers on the laps of their adults. You are not going to raise readers in your program if you don't put little ones on your laps. When you look at the Kansas Early Learning Standards, it is not an appropriate expectation to expect a toddler, so up to 3 years old, to sit in a circle and listen to a book. There is a reason why we have 1 to 4 as the ratio for toddlers. 1 to 8 in some age groups. Because we can put 2 or 3 on our laps. We can all huddle up together in a special spot on the carpet and have 4 or 5 of us even. It's the connection, the touch. So with toddlers and infants, take the child's lead. Read the books they bring to you randomly. And they might run off. In fact, I watched one of your videos and it was the perfect example of how when a child runs off that you're still talking to them about the book. And guess what? The child ended up coming back and listening to the story. The child was listening to the story when he was across the room doing I don't know what. But he was engaged. He was answering and talking. He was thinking about the book. So take the child's lead. Talk and sing to the child. Give control to the child. But also choose times wisely. Read it when they bring it to you spontaneously during play. But in childcare especially, we have to recreate the home. We have to recreate the cuddle times of home. We have to do that. And we have to build infant and toddler readers on our laps. So make sure you're thinking of how you create those moments of responsive and relationship building interactions. If you have infants in your care and you are bottle feeding, I hope you are reading books when you bottle feed, that you are singing songs, that you are looking at that infant in your arms or in front of you and you are talking to them. 0 to 3, the link at the bottom of this PowerPoint that I will post underneath the video gives you some more examples of what this looks like. Making books. So one of the funnest things in my opinion, in preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade, I even did it with older elementary children, is using picture books to springboard writing ideas and class books. And if you start Googling it, there's a lot of ideas. And honestly, once you start, it's so much fun. Whether they're alphabet books or counting books, you can do Illustrator and author studies, and you can replicate patterns of books, like Brown Bear, Brown Bear. Oh, notice that these are hyperlinked, the images, and it will take you to a page that gives you an example. And please do this. If you teach preschool and older, please do this. If you've never done an Eric Carle author study, you study his art and how he makes his illustrations, and then the kids can do it too. It is so much fun. It takes forever. Who cares? It's a month. You come out with amazing art and process and experiences. So rich. You can take, the dot book, the 10 dot book, and you can recreate your own. You could use something other than dots. You can replicate Brown Bear, Brown Bear. My mom did that, and she changed the objects. So it was the same pattern. She changed the objects. It was for my 5th birthday. And then at the end, it was, I see Beth looking at me. And actually, I guess that was the phrase throughout. Beth, Beth, what do you see? I see. And it was different things. Take these patterns, replicate them. This builds a love of literacy. This builds writing. This builds storytelling. It's different than retelling, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute too. Sign language when reading. This is really clever, and I think it's really important for us to think about. So yes, there are times, if you have a child who's hard of hearing, it would be very appropriate for you to sign when reading, or to have the other adult read and you sign, or vice versa. Ways to do that: key nouns and verbs on each page. So maybe you just have the sign for each character and some of the actions that they're doing. Maybe you don't have the signs, but you have picture cards that have the sign on them, and you could use that. You could, again, have one teacher read and one teacher sign. If one person is fluent in ASL, you could have them sign the entire book. But if you're not fluent in ASL and that's what you're trying to do for the child, because the child is going to need to be fluent in ASL, videos. There are so many YouTube videos with books that have people interpreting the story as it's being read. So how wonderful to offer that to your children. You can actually do that with children who speak another language, not just sign another language. Same idea. That is a great time to use technology and to help make it interactive. So dual language learners. Let's look at these bullets. Ready? You need to have photos and labels, visual cues. You need to play and have games that you're verbally interacting. You're playing memory. You're playing Candyland. You're playing tag or duck, duck, goose. You're playing at dramatic play. You're playing with blocks. You're talking. You're interacting. You notice how everything I just said was about multiple people, not just one person by themselves. Having playful learning opportunities. Connect children to each other. Intentionally teaching vocabulary, intentionally teaching gestures and expressions, facial expressions, talking about feelings, learning key phrases or words in the home language. Guys, did you notice anything about those bullets? Except the last one about home language. Read those again. None of those are unique to dual language learners. If you have a rich environment for preschoolers, for toddlers and infants and kindergartners, you have a rich environment for dual language learners. My first job teaching, I moved from Kansas and I was living in Washington, D.C. I taught in a kindergarten classroom with 21 children. This was over 20 years ago. These children, none of them went to Head Start. None of them went to Early Head Start. None of them went to childcare. 21 kindergartners. There were over 15 countries represented in my classroom. There were over 8 languages represented in my classroom. Of the 21 children, 18 were from another country. The school district, incredibly wealthy, a wonderful school district. They did not pull kindergartners out for ESL services because they looked at the kindergarten teachers and they said, everything you should be doing to teach reading and writing, you should be doing for every child. What you are doing for your typically developing child is what you should be doing for your dual language learner. And they were exactly right. Yes, it feels differently sometimes. Yes, it takes time. It may be longer at first. We know that. But if I am playing and interacting, if I'm giving visual cues, if I give simple signs, if there are labels and photos around the room, when it clicks, it will click and it will explode like a volcano. The language will erupt from that child and they will be better for it. If we are using these appropriate strategies. It's not what we think, but it's the truth. It really is. You are learning and you have seen and are seeing through this class quality experiences for all children. So storytelling versus retelling. I want to come back to this because it came up when we were in previous modules. Storytelling is about telling stories that may or may not mimic a picture book. They might be supported by the book, but they go beyond the mimicking. It's about being creative and unique in the storytelling. It's not about using certain words or even being in a specific sequence. Storytelling will build from retelling opportunities, but not retelling in the sense of what happened first. Oh, Little Red Riding Hood was going to see her grandma and her grandma's sick. What happened next? It's not done that way. It's about reading Little Red Riding Hood, then having puppets to play and tell the story. And it's about the child being able to sit down with their favorite Little Red Riding Hood book and pointing to the pictures and retelling the story. Storytelling will springboard from that rich retelling opportunity and opportunities. But it is not the same. Retelling would be saying, Little Orange Dog went to visit his mother and she was sick. And so I might start the same, but it's going to be different characters, or maybe it's the same characters, but they're going to do something different. Maybe Little Red Riding Hood's going to go on vacation and she's not going to go see grandma. So the storytelling might mimic some of the story, but it's not about being right or wrong. We're retelling, we're focusing on language, we're focusing on sequence of events, we're focusing on characters. So it is right or wrong retelling. Where storytelling is about building this ability to communicate. And when we build this ability in children verbally, guess what? They will have strong writing skills. You can tell your strongest writers because they're your strongest readers often, or they were read to a lot. Even if they struggle themselves with reading, if they've been given ample opportunity to be read to, you'll see that difference. Story baskets. They are so awesome. They really are. And I give you some more links to them. You can do figurines, you can do finger or stick puppets, you can do random props in a box, which some of these links show you. Wooden spoons. I thought, well, how clever is that? Because you can buy really cheap wooden spoons. And then you put the images on the ends of the spoons. So it's like a finger or a popsicle stick puppet, but a little different, a little sturdier. Felt board characters. You name it, you could do it. And having a variety can also help the interest of children. But yes, guys, story baskets. I hope I see them in your lesson plans. I hope you think about how you can use those to enrich these retelling opportunities for children that go beyond the structured circle time and into their playtime. That's the key here, is that you're using your reading during the week to springboard into their play, to guide some of their vocabulary and exploration, to give them inspiration for what they do on their own.